To the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Tuesday, January the 28th, 2025. And we hope that everybody is figuring out the Nedl app and finding it easier and easier. And we appreciate you being with us. We appreciate the questions, and we're getting the hang of how this works and paying attention to the comments. And if you want to speak to us, you get a notification that we're live, and that allows you to listen to the show. But if you actually want to talk to us, you have to be on the app itself. So be sure that you have downloaded the app and that you sign in, and then you can talk to us. There's a little icon, looks like a telephone. You click it, and it gives us a signal that we have a caller. So I know it takes just a few minutes. Everybody has to hang up, and then they get a second notification that the second hour is on. And so hopefully everybody gets right back on, and we'd love to hear from you. And I'm going to turn this over to Michael here in just a second. And welcome.
Thank you, dear heart. And welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here with us. And we get to go to the next level of this conversation. It looks like we are in an area of the country right now that winter is just about over, at least so it would appear. Not 100% sure of that, but looking at the next few days, the next 10 days or so, it looks like temperature's moving upward, which is kind of nice after the cold that we've had recently. And of course, we are live, and therefore we can have a conversation. It seems like with our transition that started before Christmas that we have lost a lot of continuity of the show. And hopefully now that Nedl's been restored, we're back in rock and roll and all things moving forward and back to the ease of being able to have conversations. So if you're listening and you have a thought for us, it's been at least a couple of weeks since we've had any really in-depth conversations with the fact that we were off the air while we went to Nashville. We lost almost 2 weeks there. And at the same time, we're going through the crisis of Blog Talk disappearing. And thank God for Jeanie and her technical brain and ability, because she has pulled it off, that we've kept at least a reason. Okay, for some reason I just disconnected and reconnected, so I'm back. That was fast, strange, but anyway, delighted that you're here. So if you have a thought or a question for us, there were a couple of questions that came through on the app yesterday. But if you have a something you'd like to process, what's going on in your world, what's going on in your mind, I've been looking to regain some continuity of the conversations we were having before we ended up with all the app problems and our foray into having to go to Nashville with Ryan, who is doing extremely well. We had dinner with him last night, went to a basketball game at the kids' school, and Arya was a cheerleader up there with her pom-poms and all, so that was a fun evening. I went out for dinner, and Ryan's doing really well. This weekend he heads back to Nashville for release. They'll do a final check on his surgery, and hopefully they're going to say, okay, you're free. He's still going through physical therapy, got a little bit of dizziness here and there when he turns his head fast and that sort of thing, but after having a golf ball-sized tumor taken off of your auditory nerve. That's sort of expected, but everything is moving upward. So if you have a thought or a question, push call, and then go down a little bit and push call again. Let's talk about it. Otherwise, I'm hanging out here on my own, and I have some thoughts to share, but I'd rather have a conversation if you're out there with a question. And since no hand goes up, I'll just step in and let's look at some thoughts regarding, yesterday we talked about the trauma that many people inflict on themselves, and that the whole reason for that is because we have stored in the mind literally generations and generations and generations of unresolved energetic patterns. And the mind, they've proven, is a pattern recognition device. That's one of the ways that survival has happened, is humans are able to recognize patterns, and by and large, those patterns, especially when we were in a world that was total threat at every moment physiologically, there was a lion or a whatever at the door, being able to spot those patterns was survival. But now, with generations of unresolved patterns in most minds, people live in the beliefs resonated by those patterns. And my offering is that there is a world beyond your mind. We are no more designed to live in our minds than, you're designed to live in what happens in your computer. Your computer's got all kinds of stories. It can show you movies. It can do all kinds of stuff, but there's no life there. The mind is simply a pattern recognizing device that was originally designed to keep us safe and survive. But most people have taken that survival device with its hostility and fear and its programmed generational capacity for blame and turned it into a device that they live in, and they think it's real life there. But beyond the beliefs of the mind, beyond the hostilities, unresolved patterns of the generations, there's a world of direct experience. And as we wake up, realizing that we are creators, then we need to begin to consciously engage in originating energy that produces the results that we're about producing, rather than playing out of replicating the results or the patterns, the generational issues that have been unresolved, rather than just living out of those, rather than playing out of those. To be able to recognize when one of those is coming up in the mind, well, how can you recognize it? Is there any form of hostility or fear attached to it? Then it's a lie. It's just perception. It's just a construct generated by the mind. It has, in many cases, very little or absolutely nothing to do with actuality, except that something in the actuality triggered that in the mind. And then if we don't know how to look beyond our minds, if we don't know that we're alive beyond our mind, we're like the person sitting in front of the computer. They don't know they're alive beyond what's happening on the screen, that there's a whole world of experience. That you don't have to be stuck on the screen of the computer. You don't have to be stuck on the screen of your mind. And that, rituals are a systematic way of focusing your creative energy toward producing a result. The Reality Management Forgiveness Worksheet is, in fact, a ritual for freeing yourself of addiction to the trauma-based mind. To break that addiction is as challenging as someone who's a deeply lost alcoholic waking up from the past, waking up from their alcoholism and overcoming that addiction. So that worksheet process, actually, just about every tool that we have is a systematic way of removing the things that bog down your creative energy, freeing your creative energy so that you have these higher faculties. You know, in the spiritual realm, there's a whole set of faculties. There's imagination, there's intuition, there's true perception, there's will, the ability to manage your mind. But if your mind manages you, then you are one of the authors of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Because if all you're doing is living out of your mind, then all the mind can present is based on what's resonated within it, what's happened in the past. So playing out of that becomes an empty ritual that has no engagement with actuality. And what we want to do is move out of, and remember the Harvard research that says that in a time frame, you know, for comparison's sake, in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. That time frame is a 25th of a second. 9 bits forms perception, is the mind's gift to you from the past, substituting itself for the present. That 9 bits comes out of, in terms of measurable units of electrical activity in the brain, 10,000 bits firing. It's been estimated, nobody knows for sure, but it's been estimated that in that same time frame of that 25th of a second, there are perhaps as much as 20 trillion bits of data available. So if we're living in a 20 trillion bit actuality, 10,000 brain cells from our life experience and from our genes firing provides us a construct called perception that we substitute for that actuality. And the mind, you know, if you go back to the ancient teachings, they talked about the great deceiver. The great deceiver is the mind of man. And it can mimic anything. But engaging in what the mind mimics as life is not an engagement in life. It's not the real thing. So our primary purpose is not to fulfill goals, but our primary purpose is to fulfill our purpose. The world would tell you your primary purpose is to fulfill the goals we have for you. We've all been brainwashed with that. That's where our workshop ritual of the purpose, personal power, and commitment worksheet comes in. That you recognize beyond your mind who you really are, what your real purpose is, and then you start to cause your mind to go along with your will, where you originate from your direct awareness of who you are and what your purpose is, and you're not just pushed around by the vicissitudes of the world. Carl Jung has a powerful saying. He says, the least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. In other words, people look for, there's a song out to kids saying a few decades ago, I can't get no satisfaction. People are looking for satisfaction in their minds and what their minds guide them to do. When living as a being which is not very well respected in our culture. No, you have to be a human doing in order to be really valuable. And so the true human being is that presence of active, conscious love. And truth and real meaning only come when that's what's operating your mind, that's what's fueling your mind. When anything less than that is fueling your mind, then you know that's time to pull out the worksheet and collapse what's there, to forgive whatever's going on in the mind, to free yourself from it. So when you wake up to the truth of who you are, then forgiveness actually becomes a thing of the past. Understanding replaces forgiveness and all the offenses that the mind presents, all the things that people have done to you. And compassion replaces the mind's game of judgment and criticism. If understanding, the mind can't understand anything. Only being can understand. The mind pretends to understand. The mind pretends to, I have a pattern match, therefore I understand this. No, all I have is a pattern match. And my mind is presenting me something from the past. There's no life in the past. But once one has cleaned up the content of their minds and insanity happens in the world, in the actuality, understanding and the presence of love replaces the need for forgiveness and the offenses of the mind. And a being of compassion steps into the most horrific of circumstances, and instead of judgment and criticism, there's simply the presence of love. When we give that up for something else, the world offers us, oh no, this person is the problem in your life, and what you need is some anger. What you need to do is attack. Well, if what you do when the stress is up and the chips are down is attack, then all your words about love and God are meaningless, because your God is anger and attack. And many people, over the years, I've had many people, when I talk about anger, is not an emotion, it's an anesthetic. And in fact, energetically, it's an assault on yourself, and its only purpose is to anesthetize yourself against feeling some sort of pain that's been resonated. And then, of course, you add to that the power person dynamic, where your power person, perhaps if anger is your issue, then you had a power person who thought they could control you with anger, and now you think, with anger, I can take the place of my power person. So now if I use this anger and inflict it on someone else, now I'm the God that I thought my power person was. So the willingness to eradicate anger totally and completely becomes part and parcel of this work. And as we wake up to the truth of who we are as human beings, the human energy system, when fueled from being, not fueled from the content of the mind, not fueled from the content of the genes, not fueled by the past. That's just a database designed for reference if you need it. But the energy system fueled by love, by this human being that we are, takes us to fuller expression. Is in the world of physics, there's a conversation about how, the energy system is just constantly winding down, entropy. But there's a thing called ectopy. And ectopy is this human system fueled by love moves toward fuller and fuller, more complex, more creative expression than the system governed by hostility and fear. So we're designed to live from our source. And breaking the addiction, and the addiction comes with a membership card to the One World Universal Religion of Blame. Whenever your mind is thinking in terms of blame, then there's an addiction there. You're not designed to live from a mind that has been brainwashed. And by the age of 4, you've heard me say it before, by the age of 4, most everybody is brainwashed into living in the one world universal religion of blame, guilt, fault, shame, and victimhood. And the mind will keep presenting that. The mind will keep formulating, as long as the data is there, unforgiven within the mind, the database, the mind will form constructs, pictures, which it will paint on the inside of your eyeballs, and you'll believe those pictures are actually out there, as opposed to being pictures generated from within by the content of your own mind. And sadly, we live in a culture that instead of supporting us living directly from source, living directly from being, our culture makes sure that we're cut off from that source, and we have our minds filled with goals that we are brainwashed into believing we're supposed to fill for others. And that those goals are more, that fulfilling those goals are more important than our connection to our source. And we want to go back and recognize the most important thing in anyone's life is living from that source. You know, you've heard us tell the story about the rose and the butterfly. I haven't shared that one on the show for a while. And I see we have some new listeners. So, you know, rose and the butterfly. Imagine we have this rose and butterfly that you know, meet, they have an ego, they meet, they fall in love, they have this great time together. And the rose, knowing that the love of the butterfly is the most important thing, the intention of the butterfly is the most important thing in its life. And of course, the butterfly up and flies away. The rose, knowing that that butterfly is the source of its life, uproots itself and gives chase. What happens to the rose? It dies. Why does it die? It dies because it made something more important than being connected to its source. And we live in a world that we all come in fully connected. Hold a newborn child and tap into its energy, and you know exactly what the active presence of love is. And what does the world do? Make sure that connection's broken by some form of hostility or fear, a power person dynamic. And then once that's been repeatedly reinforced in the mind, once one has been brainwashed into believing that fulfilling other people's goals are more important than our connection, and there's all this unresolved pain, then every time someone comes along and makes a demand, up comes that pain. And that pain, that unresolved unconscious energy, is literally turned into pictures in the mind, painted on the inside of our eyeballs that we think are about somebody else, not realizing that they're about ourselves. And Yeshua brought 2,000 years ago this tool of, here's how you crash those constructs of the mind. And that's what real forgiveness is. If you've been brainwashed, either genetically or environmentally, into some form of hostility or fear that your mind says is about something, it's not about something. It's about the fact that that's the energy that's held within you. And the mind will keep you going forever. from person to person to person, the situation from why is this happening to me again to why is this happening to me again forever. And when I let go of the goal that drives that process, then that construct collapses in the mind. And let's say hello. We've got a hand up. Welcome, young lady. How are you?
Hi, Michael. It's your usual customer over here.
Hey, delighted to hear your voice. How do you be? What's happening?
I have gotten a text from my grandson, and everything you're saying about being in the one world religion of blame this is sort of the way he operates. The whole world is against him and all that.
Right,
But
right.
for the first time, he sent me a vulnerable, somewhat open text. And I haven't,
Awesome.
I got it a couple of days ago, and it is heartbreaking, and I have not answered it because I don't know what to say without getting into the tar baby story again.
Right,
And
right.
I don't really know whether this is a safe thing to do. I have stopped, as you know, you saw the kinds of things he was texting.
Right. Yeah. You shared
Belligerent.
that with me.
Well, he said, please, I am honestly confused and scared about the future all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And money helps. And so does moderation, meaning he's been overdoing the drugs.
Right,
Using too much is too much. And being sober is too hard for my senses.
right.
Please.
He's addicted to covering his pain with whatever
Yeah.
substances he's using. Yeah. Well, that's
Right.
a big admission. That sounds like he's starting to catch on to some truth.
And he's saying, and being sober is too hard for my senses.
Right.
Please, thanks.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
he wants to talk. I know he's angry because his mother and stepfather are supporting his older brother, who has been sober for 2.5, almost 3 years,
Right.
who has just gotten a job. And as soon as he gets that job and can pay his own rent, they'll withdraw this help. But
Mm-hmm.
they have supported him until he gets on his feet, because his sobriety is a great achievement, and they don't want to make life too difficult for him
Right.
before he gets going.
I hear it.
I'm glad. And so, but with Jacob, he has an inheritance that he can tap into. My husband is the trustee.
Right.
And if he needs some money and isn't making enough, he could ask for some of that, but he doesn't want to tap into that. I understand that. He wants us to support him. Meanwhile, he's still using, and he's explaining in this text, it's too hard for me to be sober with my senses. He self-medicates, as you just said.
Right. Right.
So I'm just asking you for advice. Any thoughts?
Sure. Would you mind sharing the whole text?
That was the whole text
Okay.
this time. Yeah,
All
he
right.
has gone on rants that go on and on and on. He's very bright, and I can't follow them all. They're all political rants and what's wrong with everybody and everything and so forth. And he also is yelling and screeching about how his biological father, for all his faults, is giving him money, and he's kind of shaming us into giving him money
Mm-hmm.
too. Anyway, so there's the
Right.
picture.
Well, my thought in from our past conversations about what's going on in his world, what he's done, and the willingness to use you as a whipping post
Yeah.
would be that to pick up the thing that he says is the solution, and that's money.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he's saying your money.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were you, I'd reply with, well, you've got money here. and all you have to do is ask for it, and we'll give it to you. You know, it's yours. And I understand that you don't really want to use that. You'd like to keep that for the future, but you're the one who sets the parameters here. And if you'd like us to support you, then there's going to be, you know, if you want us to step in and replace your money so you get to keep yours and use ours, the only way we're going to do that is if you fulfill some conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, he obviously needs help to free himself from addiction. I understand with his history and, you know, with his brother being alcoholic, there's probably a genetic propensity. They have shown some genetic factors in alcoholism.
Yeah, it's true.
And so my other take from the text you shared with me in the past and such is he's also addicted to hostility. You know,
Yeah.
we've said repeatedly, I'm saying this because there's some other new callers on the call, is that hostility, anger is not an emotion. Anger is an internally produced anesthetic. It's a drug that anesthetizes against pain. And, you know, we've processed quite a bit in the past about how much rage he uses in order to try to cover his pain. And now he's using, I guess, is still pot and alcohol.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he's also using it to bully us to get money.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's his hostility. So my take would be there is three addictions: hostility, alcohol, and pot. And, you know, the addicted mind is cunning at finding ways of projecting its pain and making it all somebody else's fault and leading others to believe if they just follow his directive, then everything would be okay. And my offering would be you just have to refuse, recognize you're dealing with an addiction, and it's the addiction talking, and that you can't play in his solutions. Because the addictive mind will always have a solution. That is, if you just change, then my life would be okay. Rather than if I just changed, my life would be okay.
Yeah.
And so, but the fact that he's told you money would make it easier, and I hear it. You know, you've shared in the past how brutal his father was, and that early life pain it's just huge stuff to work through. But if I were in your position and I were going to provide him funding from me, I'd provide his money to him unconditionally. What do you want to do with it? Like, I wouldn't even get involved. You need $1,000, you need 10,000, you need 20,000, you need your whole inheritance. Here you go. I know you're going to go blow it on alcohol, but you're going to have to pay the price. That's up to you. And it sounds like he's got enough sense to know he doesn't want to do that, but he's willing to blow yours. And that's where where it would be simply, this is going to be, anything you get from us is going to be absolutely conditional. And we will support you if you will accept this money as payment for, and I think this is a huge way of supporting him, is I'm going to pay you to get better. Now, that doesn't always produce a result. I remember in South Florida, I was in Fort Lauderdale and doing a workshop series, and there was a woman who had just a whole tale of woe, trauma, being taken advantage. I mean, she just had the wailing story. And I have no job and I have no money and I'm going to die. So I said, well, I'll tell you what. I hear you and I'll support you. I'll tell you what I'll do. You want to come to the workshop and you got no money to do it, you can't come to my workshop free. This was a process-oriented workshop. When I did I'd go and do a week of workshops around the country and around the globe, and those workshops were always free, but they gave people pieces of information that if they started to use the tools, they could start healing. But this was a process-oriented workshop, and I learned early in my career that if you're going to do process work with people, they have to be committed. So she had zero money and sounded like a lot of willingness. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I will pay you each week. It was a weekly workshop. I will pay you the amount of the workshop in order to turn in, and we figured out, I don't remember what the details were, but we figured out an hourly rate for doing worksheets. You turn your ticket into the workshop each week is X number of worksheets that you do your work, because you're not working and you got all kinds of time, right? Oh yeah, hey, that's great. I'll do that. I never saw her after the first week.
Yeah, yeah, what a
And I
story.
understand it because, and with your grandson, the pain he's going to have to feel and deal with is enormous. It's probably going to be some of the energetic pain that was passed on from his father, and it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
But sooner or later, one has to take responsibility and realize I've got my work to do. And
You know, Michael, you helped me realize one thing. I am confused about his using pot, because there is medical marijuana. Not that he's using that. He buys on the street, I suppose. I don't know what he's getting. But he is treating his anxiety.
right.
Maybe in one of those things, would it be possible to say to him, if you see a therapist who prescribes a certain amount of pot for your anxiety, some doctors may do that. I would work with you on that. Is that just confusing everything? I don't feel I have the right to say you've got to get off pot.
Well, my offering would be that you've got to start doing your work.
Yeah.
Now, sooner or later, anybody who's going to do their work is going to have to remove all addictive behaviors and substances. And ultimately, the bottom line addiction that everybody sooner or later has to face is addiction to the pain in their own minds.
Yeah.
And so rather than you're going to stop alcohol or you're going to stop pot, maybe it looks like you're going to go to NA and you're going to, prove to me that you're going to NA, and you're going to start to do your work. You're going to start to clean up your mind just so you can get free. If reality, quote unquote, without drugs is too harsh, then start working on softening your reality. And that's he holds the belief, as most who've been brainwashed in the one world universal religion of blame, guilt, fault, shame, and victimhood, that it's all somebody else's fault. But the truth is, sooner or later he's going to have to get that that's about him, and he will get that at NA or AA.
Yeah.
And he'll get support for starting to move away from those substances.
He asked me if I would join him in a Codependence Anonymous group in a different text. He
Oh,
asked
that's
me if
interesting.
I would do that with him. We're so far away; it would have to be a Zoom thing. But I
Right.
picture getting enmeshed even there. And when he tells his story, he'll be in blame. I'm just imagining this from the way he's always been. Maybe I should drop that notion and give it a chance.
NA, if you've got a good NA facility, or pardon me, um, a good facilitator, if
Mhm.
blame starts, that facilitator is going to stop it in an instant.
Yeah, I don't
And
any AA group I've ever been through, they are not interactive at all. Each person comes on and says their thing, and everybody says, "Thanks, Jane," and then we go to the next person. I didn't find it. I like
well,
your way.
Al-Anon,
Yeah, Al-Anon. That's
Al-Anon, there
yeah.
is now I haven't been part of an Al-Anon group. My understanding is that there is interactive and taking or helping people to hold themselves and each other accountable. Maybe I'm incorrect about that.
Well, the one I was on did not allow that. So, but maybe another group. I stopped it after about 6 months. I went a lot to a lot of meetings and just found them to be, you couldn't get past stage one because there was no accountability at all.
Hmm.
But that might be just the group. Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know. Maybe some research in that regard. Again, I've never, we've done some shows on how, the parallels with this work in AA, and I'm aware of the, Al-Anon type group, but I've never really become acquainted with anybody directly telling me, here's how it works, here's what's done. My understanding was it was some facilitation as such, somewhat like you do with the Wednesday support group.
Yeah.
But I may be mistaken there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for those ideas. I have written him a draft of a response, but again, he's so bright and wily that he's trying to find a way to snare me and get me back to do his blaming and insulting again. And I don't know if I'm just being a sucker by going back in, even though this is such a poignant email.
Well, you bring to mind America's Got Talent presenter. I'll send you a link to it. It's actually hilarious. The guy's a comedian, and he has Tourette's syndrome. Like he actually has Tourette's, and his comedy routine is about Tourette's.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite hilarious because he talks about how when he was young, his parents sent him to a Tourette's camp. He says, there really is such a thing. And so here we are. And he says, and he kind of gets into a routine of, and I discovered that when, this person across from me does whatever their Tourette's thing is, my Tourette's takes that as a challenge and does it even stronger. And he talks about being in a circle with, 100 different Tourette's. And, the person on the right did a shoulder roll, and then my Tourette saw them do the shoulder roll, and I did a jerk on my neck, and they did it, and the whole, it's really quite hilarious. And so, what that reminds me of is the game of, are we just going to play tit for tat, or is there actually going to be accountability when the blame comes up? And that would perhaps have to be part of the ground rules of, if you're going to do some work, you're going to have to be willing to be held accountable, rather than just this, addiction to rage. And, every time he's raged at you in those texts, he's in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But there's no way you can resolve that pain as long as he's putting it into his brain's image of everybody else, into his mind's constructs. There's no freedom from that.
Doing that, Michael. Say
it again.
We have the whole country doing that.
Oh, it's crazy time. Yeah. It's this is an opportunity for such profound healing if people will just give up their membership card in that one world universal religion of blame and step into responsibility for their own minds. I mean, everybody's being shown their deepest and their worst. Good breath. I'm breathing with you.
Well, I was thinking about how you seem okay. You seem okay in spite of everything. You're not asleep. You're not in denial. Your eyes are open. You're curious. You're watching, but you're okay.
Yeah, my offering is that I think that it's really important for us at this stage to not normalize the insanity that's going on in the culture and to hold it accountable. But I can't hold it accountable from a place of hostility or fear, or else I'm in projection. So, unless I do my work first, and unless I take time every day to cultivate my relationship with being, with my own state of being love, of functioning as love, and then, we can look out into the actuality. We can responsibly hold it accountable.
Being among other people is very helpful. I'm an introvert and I love being alone. But I find, like, we had a vestry retreat. Now, these are people that I like a lot, but they're not my close friends. But just having supper with them was such a relief. normalizing or connecting. I don't know what it was, but I was just so happy to just be sitting there with these great people that I don't really know very well, except through church business.
Right.
Uh,
Human beings are awesome.
yeah.
I mean, to me, the fact that we each have a human life, though many haven't discovered it yet,
Oh,
and when we in with each other live as human beings, it's
mm.
just like such a monumental gift.
You know what happened the other day or just yesterday? Jonathan sent a video of himself and his cousin. They're below St. Augustine, sailing away. The temperature is 55 degrees. He got a picture of about 6 dolphins
Oh,
accompanying them,
wow.
leaping up and down, playing. So it isn't only people. Jonathan was
Right.
in heaven. He was saying, talk about, Michael, you said vitality is increased being out in nature like that. He's calling us and saying, I'm meditating
This
and
is life.
I feel so good. I feel free and I'm joyful and I'm looking forward to my life. This he has never said anything like that. And
That's
well,
awesome.
I mean, now I know it, but yeah, people are great. Dolphins are good too.
Yeah, and my offering would be now's the time for him to pick up the pen and do some work on, you know, he's free of this. I mean, there's that old saying that says, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
Familiarity doesn't breed contempt. It's the resonance of my trauma over and over and over and over and over again, which I call familiarity, but it's really just the resonance of my trauma that is where contempt comes from.
Oh,
And being out of that which resonates what he ultimately has to deal with gives him a space to experience living from being. And if he comes back,
yeah, that's the deal.
then that stuff starts to resonate again. So if there's a way to communicate to him that, so great, that's awesome. Now that you're at that level of awakeness and aliveness and being, do some work.
Yeah. Mm.
Absence doesn't make the heart grow fonder. Absence means that which resonated, my denied and dissociated pain and trauma, is gone away. So it looks like my pain and trauma has gone away. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone away. It's just receded in the level of intensity that I'm no longer aware of it. But if I get back to that place where, familiarity, guess what's coming up?
Yeah.
Sooner
That's
or
what,
later, somebody has to pick up the tools and do their work, because life
yeah.
without tools means that I get to look at whatever hell I'm carrying around inside of me unresolved over and over and over again. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, if I go away on the mountaintop and meditate, it's easy. I've spent time in India, and you look at, these gurus that are so holy, and if you look behind the curtain and you see the way they treat the people around them, this is not holiness.
Yeah. You know what, Michael? Speaking of India, my daughter is in the air heading for India right now for a 10-day pilgrimage. Here's an Episcopal priest whose earliest memories have to do with Tim and me singing bhajans, Hindu devotional
Mm.
songs, and studying Vedanta. We
Oh,
left there
sweet.
when she was about 4, and she says, Mom, those are my roots. I have to
Mm.
go. She's
Oh,
on
that's
a
awesome.
pilgrimage. Not only that, but she's communicating with her husband via text. He is sending us the pictures and the texts from her. She is off her iPhone, off social media totally.
Good for her.
Isn't that amazing? I'm such an
Yeah,
addict. I admire her so much for doing that.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, if you get to communicate with her, tell her we extend love in her direction, and the same with Jonathan,
Thanks.
and we'll hold the space if there are any other support we can be with what's happening with Jacob.
Thank you so much.
We're here to support it.
Yeah. I'm just gun shy with him because he gets so belligerent. But if I could get
I
through,
hear you.
he's put out a musical album, and I listened to it, and I wrote to him and said, I would like to buy this album. That's one way he could make money.
Right.
Uh, and he told me how to find it on Spotify or something, and it's very
Oh,
confusing.
cool.
Haven't mastered that, but anyway, yeah, there are some good ways he could be supporting himself. He does have a job, but he's
Yeah, you were
working as
telling me about it, right?
an NPR. He's trying
Yeah,
to get people to invest in NPR, which is being attacked. So people aren't very enthusiastic about supporting NPR because it might be
right.
removed. So it's
Yeah.
very hard job. Anyway, I'm yakking away.
All
Michael,
right.
go
Well,
back.
we'll hold the space for him and
Okay,
keep us posted. All right. Blessings.
thanks. Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye-bye. Okay, and we've got a question or two in the chat room at Lane. Glad you're with us. And you're saying, after canceling goals on the worksheet, my brain brings up a lot of thoughts. Well, remember that the pictures, Elaine, that are painted on the inside of our eyeballs, our perceptions, are literally, I used the example yesterday, you were on yesterday when I talked about, if I go inside the TV, I cannot find a picture, I cannot find a word spoken. But here I am watching, pictures and words being spoken. How does that happen? Well, energetic patterns, data comes in through the antenna, and the TV has a conversion capacity where it turns that data into pictures and sound. Your mind does exactly the same thing. Literally nothing in the actuality resembles. It has features that are similar, but nothing in the actuality resembles what our mind makes up about it. So when I have a reality, let's say, Bill is not cooperating with the agreement he had with me, and I'm enraged. So the thought disorders about all the times when I've been taken advantage of are energetic, they're data, like the data coming into the TV, and then triggered into activity by the goal for him to keep his agreement with me. That data is turned into a picture, seeing as how he's the focus of my attention. That data is turned into a picture about Bill, and I'm really angry at Bill. But I have no way of estimating how many thoughts does it take to produce a really solid visual picture on the inside of my eyeballs that I believe is really out there. I don't know. Well, I mean, could it be 2? Could it be 10? Could it be 200 million? 100 generations of stuff going on? So when you apply forgiveness, what forgiveness does, when you recognize that this picture your mind is creating out of the data in your unconscious is driven by a goal, that goal kind of acts like a recruiter. If you've ever been on a sports team, let's say in high school or in college, and a recruiter came around looking for people to recruit into the pros. So your goal is like that recruiter. It's metaphorically, it's looking through resonance at everything that matches this goal, and it pulls all of those thoughts, all of that data together, and that is converted by the mind as a converter into a picture. Perception. So what is it made up of? I don't know. 10, 100, 100,000, 100 million thoughts? I don't know. But when I cancel the goal, that construct out of those thoughts that have been converted into a picture on the inside of my eyeballs that I think is really something that's out there, that picture collapses. When it collapses on its own footprint, and now I have access to my unconscious thought disorders. If this perception about Bill or myself or whoever or whatever is pained It's pained because there are thought disorders that don't belong in my tissue structure. And when I force them on a cell, the cell says, ouch, I hurt. When they're locked into a cell, the cell is in continuous hurt. When I cancel a goal and collapse my perception, I get to access everything in the cell, which can be thought after thought after thought after thought. You know, sometimes you'll have to do a dozen worksheets a minute when you really step into process. And that's where the still point breathing process comes in. Remember that intensive year we did still point breathing. That's where once you get things moving, then there's a super processor for those unconscious thoughts. That's why on the worksheet there are several reminders to breathe. Because when you breathe, when you turn it over, that's when those energetic patterns start to move. So they would be thought disorders, and then the second part of your question is, are those realities that are stuck in my mind? I'd offer that they're thoughts, perhaps not even yours. They might be something 10 generations ago or 2 generations ago. If you look at any of the patterns in your worksheets, do you notice any of those patterns in either mom or dad or aunt, uncle, sister, brother? So they're not realities until a goal assembles them, recruits them into activity, and converts them into a picture. And so as I start to see my thought disorders and I apply breath and the presence of active love to those thought disorders dissolve. They disappear. Now, you say, well, gee, I did a worksheet on that. Why am I not finished? Well, that thought or that thought disorder might be something that has infected 100 generations in my bloodline, and 100 generations is billions of people. Literally, you know, when the scriptures talks about the sins, remembering that word sin simply means an energy that's off the mark of the fathers are passed into 3 and 4 generations. 4 generations back, that's 31 lives when you include yourself. Like, whoever told us that we had in our structure every thought, every feeling, every reality of those 30 people that went before us, mom and dad, and mom and dad's moms and dads, moms and dads, moms and dads. Who told us that? That's all born and bred in us. Which to me is one of the wondrous reasons for doing your work, because you don't have to pass that garbage on to the next generation. You can clean it up. So as you apply breath and the active presence of love, those things that are out of harmony with love, out of harmony with the truth of who you are dissolved by the master solvent of breath and the presence of love. And some of them might mean, you know, you uncover a thought disorder. You know, Bill isn't cooperating with me, and then I remember when, you know, he isn't doing what he agreed with me he would do, and then all of a sudden I just have this memory pop up of I was 4 years old and mom promised to take me for ice cream, and then got busy and never did take me, and I was so angry and I threw a fit and she beat me and you know, whatever. So that thought disorder, when uncovered, means there's my next worksheet. When that's the kind of memory that surfaces, my next worksheet is on that event with mom. So mom becomes the object of attention. Or maybe, you know, the way that thought disorder comes up is I was a really snotty little brat with mom. So now I'm going to do that worksheet on myself. And that way you go down through layer by layer by layer by layer of thought disorders until the recruited thought disorders around any given issue are so weakened that your mind can't produce that kind of pained reality ever again. You're now free of it. And that might, you know, when they said to Yeshua, well, how many of these darn worksheets do I have to do? Is 7 of them enough? Well, in Aramaic, he said no. He said 77 times 70, which I would offer means an infinite number of times till you're complete with whatever the issue is. And so that would be the work that would need to be done. And, you know, it's not Dr. Feelgood to do it. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of people, they go, oh, wow, this is great. I want it. But then they turn tail and run because, oh, my God, how much work do I have to do? It can't ever be done. It's too much. Well, That's another belief, and that would be another worksheet because it can be done. And it's a process and it takes time. And yeah, that will open to your next worksheets, and then you're saying, and the trigger line, just state them as situations because it does not appear as a person when the reality comes up. Yes, you can do a worksheet around any person, place, thing, event, past, present, future, situation, whatever it happens to be. And of course, that can include yourself. So that would be where the work would be done. I hope that makes sense. And, you know, if you push the talk button, we can chat about it if that's appropriate too. We are down to just about a minute and a half here. And so what I'm going to do is just invite everyone, if there are no thoughts to share in this last minute and a half, is just, if you would just get quiet and allow yourself to take a breath. And remember the presence of being. Allow yourself to step into a moment where you feel that active presence of love and ask it to go to work inside of your structure, cleaning and dissolving every thought that's based in any form of hostility or fear and the resultant projections from those thoughts. Allow them to soften, allow them to be removed as you step more deeply into the active presence of love that you are. And allow that energy of love to go to work on your structure and feel the different places where, as that energy moves, there will be pulses, there will be releases, there will be realignment of your whole structure and essence. And as you come into alignment with your essence, more and more your whole physiology coalesces around that essence and becomes the pillar on which you stand in your life. And know that we are here doing that same work with you and holding the space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. Thank you for joining us. Be blessed. Take care. Bye-bye.